I'm really happy to open this webinar with Ruth Peltason, and a good friend and a wonderful lady, and so knowledgeable and so interesting, who knows all the small details of the more consumer side of the diamonds, which we never discussed before. Therefore, I'm very pleased, Ruth, that you are here with us. And without further ado, I would like to have you present it and start your webinar, which has today the most wonderful topic. And I'm sitting on the balcony surrounded by spring flowers, and there is never better place to discuss the powerful and wonderful women who made the diamonds what they are. Thank you very much, and please, let's start.
Thank you, Alex. We also have with us the editor-in-chief and our chief curator of the World Diamond Museum, Usha Balakrishnan. Usha, if you want to say a few words. No. So then we're going to let Usha, do you want to say something?
No, just welcome to everybody. Looking forward to hearing Ruth this evening.
Ah, wonderful. It's great to have you with us today. And there we go. Today we are delighted to continue our webinar series with Ruth Peltason, an author, an editor, a lecturer. She runs Bespoke Books, an editorial studio specializing in books on cultural arts. She is, among many others, the author of David Webb, The Quintessential American Jeweler and Living Jewels, Masterpieces of Nature, and a book on jewelry and modernism. Ruth has lectured on jewelry at museums such as the Los Angeles County Museum of Arts and Cooper Hewitt, the Smithsonian Design Museum, and for Christie's and the auction houses, Christie's and Sotheby's. She was previously senior editor, director of design and style books at Abrams. She is the author of the essay, Powerful Women Imported Diamonds, in the book Diamonds Across Time. She lives in New York City. Today, Ruth will go into detail about her essay, Powerful Women Imported Diamonds. And afterwards, she will answer some of the questions that you will ask through the chat. And as always, our digital whiz, Frinda Aurora, is supervising this webinar behind the scenes. And at this moment, and from this moment onward, Ruth, the screen is going to be yours.
Okay. I hopefully am, doing in my screen share. Nope. There we go.
Yes, very good.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon and good evening. And I am just delighted to be here, and I'm very grateful to Alex, whom I had the pleasure of meeting a few years ago, and to Usha, who guided the ship as in putting together this massive tome, which, if you all haven't seen, I'm going to hold up. It's very heavy. Diamonds Across Time. It is heavy. It's also loaded with information and extremely beautifully designed and printed. So hats off to everyone who was involved in making the book, and Usha for her extraordinary patience. I realized that there are 10 contributors in the book, and I might be the only American, but I'm certainly the most undereducated of the group. And so rather than tell you about diamond cuts and things like that, I'm sort of going to go to my natural default, which is just to gas on about stories. I love stories about women. I love art and culture. And I have long seen jewelry as another one of the arts. And I was thinking, I wrote this essay, Powerful Women, Important Diamonds, oh gosh, 2 or 3 years ago now when I began it. And who knew that this subject would become so important in the past few years for any number of reasons. But I am delighted to say now that this comes on the heels of Women's History Month. And we've got a great lineup. I really stuffed in a lot, so I'm going to gallop along, and you all who are patiently listening, please post any questions. If I make errors, just chalk it up to a lack of sleep or something. But what I really want to say is there are 4 words that describe these women: power, prestige, privilege, and provenance. They're selected not because of their beauty, though many of them are, or for their purse, though some of them were indeed wealthy, or some of them had lucky marriages. Really, the reason I'm spotlighting them is because they were an indelible part of the culture of their day, and they remain so. And I want to talk really to you about how women yield power. It's extraordinary. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought it's pretty interesting. So there's the power of patriotism. There is the power of the screen, the power of philanthropy, the power of mothers and daughters, which should never be overlooked. There's the power of the throne, and there's even, remarkably, the power of society. That said, I need to go to the next screen, and I'm not able to. Let me see. Brenda, how do I get to the next screen?
The down tab?
Yes. I'm using it.
Click on your screen once and then take the down tab. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here we go. We are going to start with, everyone recognizes this face, Jackie Kennedy. I always thought if I were to draw her, I would first make a square and then I would do a triangle, because that's pretty much her face. And I think she was extraordinary for what she did. And above all, what she did is what I'm calling patriotism with flair. And at this time in our world, patriotism, civic duty, democracy, these are all what I call capital considerations and values that are important and sometimes even worth dying for. As we go to the first image, we have, I am losing so much of my screen. I'm sorry, everybody. Brenda, I am not seeing a lot of my screen.
You need to go back. Press
Well,
page.
in any case, I hope everyone else can see the full screen. This is really the makeover of the White House. What was extraordinary is she said, you know, people come to see the White House and practically nothing dates back before 1948. She found it dull, fusty, and she was young. She was 31 when she became First Lady. She was the youngest First Lady in the White House. And what's interesting is that she kind of is a bit of a Mona Lisa. You know, people felt like they knew her because she was beautiful and she was photographed all the time. And we saw those wonderful young kids on the grounds of the White House, but we didn't actually know her. And I think that was quite deliberate about Jackie Kennedy throughout her life. She was born Jacqueline Bouvier, but she wasn't just an entitled beauty. She really was what we call working girl. Early on, from the fall of 1951 to the summer of 53, she worked for the Washington Times Herald, and she had a column called Inquiring Camera Girl, where she'd go up to people on the street and she'd ask them their questions, like their views on marriage, whether it was proper or necessary to tip your barber or your hairdresser. In fact, as it turns out, she even once interviewed John Kennedy. Apparently for one of her last columns, which is so funny how things come around and you'll understand, she was sent to London to cover the coronation of Queen Elizabeth in 1953. And she was asking people on the street, do you think Elizabeth will be England's last queen? To which we would say, well, pretty much so, because she's still queen. So that was June 4th, 1953. But really, it's her role as First Lady that we're celebrating. And that's where she found her voice, a soft voice, but one that was heard around the world. So she redecorates the White House. She puts on musicals, arts events. This was an event, the lower right, to President Kennedy's right is the writer Pearl Buck. To Mrs. Kennedy's left is the great poet Robert Frost, who in fact wrote the lines for John Kennedy's inauguration, which he predicted. He said that the Kennedy presidency would be a golden age of poetry and power. Now, Mrs. Kennedy gave a tour of the redecorated White House, and it was called the Valentine's Day Tour because it was held February 14th, 1962. She did such a brilliant job that she was given an honorary Emmy Award by the Academy of Television Arts and Entertainment and Sciences. So she begins with a splash, but a splash that's beautifully received. The next thing, of course, is that she's a beauty. She's a young beauty. She radiates. And it's this radiation that just changes everything. You have to understand you're going from Mamie Eisenhower to Jackie Kennedy. That is one hell of a leap. So I really feel that as First Lady, she transformed the staid and the stuffy with unique style and smarts. She really, and I thought of this phrase, patriotism with flair, but look at her here. I mean, she's just beaming, and so is everyone else sort of in her atmosphere. What I love is she's taken this Victorian sunburst brooch, which she bought at Wartski in London, and she's put it up in her hair. And this is, of course, not the actual brooch here, but this is actually an approved replica by the White House. But this makeover was complete. She starts doing things like, in addition to that sunburst in her hair, she's also wearing the Van Cleef & Arpels flame and wheat sheaf clips in her hair. So here she is with Queen Elizabeth, and then they were invited to have dinner at Buckingham Palace in June of '61. You don't see Prince Philip here, and though this isn't a fabulous color photograph, I wanted you to see the color of Jackie Kennedy's dress. It's the most heavenly sky blue. It's by the House of Chez-Ninon, and it's a blue silk. And as the kids would say, she crushes it with this look. See if I can keep going. Okay, so let's talk about that great engagement ring. Now, the ring that she gets was, in actual fact, many of you might know this, but it was not picked out by her husband-to-be. It was picked out by her future father-in-law. Joe Kennedy picked it out for John Kennedy to give to his fiancée. He bought it at Van Cleef & Arpels. It's a beautiful square cut diamond and emerald that you can see with these tapered baguettes. And it's sort of it's very much a period look. It's clean. It's got these wrap baguettes. Frankly, I'm a little surprised the way that Jackie Kennedy had it refashioned. She puts in these round and marquee cut diamonds. It's more organic. It's almost like a laurel leaf. It's certainly softer altogether. And that becomes what I do think is interesting about it, as much as maybe it's not my taste or what I wouldn't have expected from her. What I find so interesting is that she certainly isn't shy about knowing her own style and using that style, and that matters. Okay, nope, let's try again. She had what I call signature style. Part of that signature style were these fabulous diamond waterfall earrings made by Van Cleef & Arpels. She gets them from her husband at the birth of their daughter in 1957. And you can see that she's wearing them all the time. She's wearing them all the time. And they become very simply her look. She's now put the diamond starburst brooch on her bodice. This is a fabulous, really, again, sky blue Ola Cassini gown. Now, Ola Cassini, we've moved from Chez-Ninon to Ola Cassini. And why is that? Americans had a few issues with the fact that the fluent in French Mrs. Kennedy, First Lady, was wearing a lot of French couture. They thought she should be wearing American couturier. And so Ola Cassini ends up designing, frankly, much of her ensembles while she's in the White House. Of course, as you famously know, Halston made a number of her hats. He even commented what it was like to make hats for her head because she had a big head. But that's another point. Let's talk about my next subject, which is philanthropy. These women all found a way to give back to their country. I confess you're going to hear a lot of discussion today about American philanthropy, but this is an important time in the country that I live in, and I'm hugely patriotic, and I'm hugely impressed with so many women in this country have done. We're looking at a smattering of the great diamonds that make up the National Gem Collection at the Smithsonian. Most of you probably recognize the blue diamond, the heart-shaped blue diamond, which was gifted to the Smithsonian by Marjorie Merriweather Post. It's just amazing. But before we get to Mrs. Post, I want to talk about someone that doesn't get talked about enough. And this is Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney. She was a powerhouse, born to money like all these women, but she decides to go another way. And already you can see her, she's funny. I mean, she has Robert Henry paint her in the style of an odalisque, like remember the famous Ingres odalisque of 1814, but she's clothed. She's got a slight harem pant on. Look at how it's grabbed at the ankle, which I think is adorable, and the kind of detail work on her sweater and her top. She's confident. She is seated there. It's as though she's seated on her throne. That's an important point to remember. The other thing to understand is that since the time that Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney starts to get involved with art, there have now been 4 generations of Vanderbilt Whitney women who have served as presidents or on the board of the Whitney Museum of American Art. So what happens is she wants to paint, she wants to sculpt, and she starts doing that downtown in Greenwich Village. Eventually she's working what's called McDougal Alley, and then she keeps going and she starts a school, the Whitney Studio she starts, and it's down on 8th Street, and she's starting to show emerging artists. A lot of the artists of the Ashcan School, who you know, like John Sloan, were really painting what New York was like at the time. She then, at a certain point, she has some 500 works. It's around the time of the stock market crash, and she's got all these paintings, and she says to the Met, "I'd like to donate them to you." And amazingly, the Met turns her down. They turn down Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney. So what does she do? She makes lemonade out of lemons. She opens her own museum. And she founds her museum in 1930. She opens it officially in 1931 on 8th Street at 5th Avenue. And it has a name and a charter which carries to this day. The Whitney Museum of American Art would only showcase works by American artists. And it's a mandate that they have embraced for years. So it's a great story. Many of you who know New York or have visited here know the great Marcel Breuer building, which sort of a fortress. But now the Whitney has moved downtown into the meatpacking district. So they're almost like a straight shot across town from where they began in the West Village on 5th Ave and 8th Street to the west side in the meatpacking district. We will move again somehow to the next screen. One of the fabulous pieces of jewelry that Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney had were these Chaumae Wings. They were made for her. They sort of represent what was so modern about her because they were so versatile. They were, when they were put on a tiara frame, they fluttered like the wings of a bird. They could be worn as brooches. She sometimes would put them on her shoulder, or they really were a bodice ornament. So they would sit, I don't know if you all can see me, but they'd sit down there. I love this beautiful, beautiful preparatory drawing that you see bottom right here. They're just simply extraordinary pieces of jewelry, and indelibly bound up with her. What are you looking at? 566 diamonds, 708 rose cut diamonds in blue enamel. This is 1908. So it's extraordinary. One of my favorites. When I was working on the essay for the book that Usha and Alex did, I've written about and I've thought about Marjorie Merriweather Post quite a bit, but I kind of fell in love with her while researching this essay because I was struck by what she did in her largesse. As she said, you know, there are other people who are better off than I am, but the only difference is I do more with what I have. And that more was that she single-handedly gave the most jewelry to an American museum in this country, the most important pieces. Now, a couple decades later, Bunny Melon gives a couple hundred pieces or more to the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts upon her death. But up until the time that Bunny Melon dies, nobody has done more to shape the keeping of great jewelry and historic jewelry to an American institution than Marjorie Merriweather Post. For that, I just adore her. I want to go back somehow, but I don't know how. Can someone take me back? Please try. I'm sorry, you all. This is not.
Do page up, page up.
Yes, it was stuck, but now it's working, everybody. So look at this amazing brooch. Now, here's what's so interesting. People think of this as a Marcus & Co. brooch, which it is, but Oscar Heyman Brothers, OHB, put it together for them. Marcus buys the stone, this carved emerald in Bombay in around 1920. They come back and Mrs. Post decides to have it made into a brooch. And so it is, and it's extraordinary. By the way, she's wearing it here in this portrait by Yusuf Karsh that ran in Vogue in 1950. It's an amazing piece, and well, you can see it here. It's just you've got these square cut emeralds on either side. You've got these pears along the way, brilliant cuts, baguettes. It's got a lot of bells and whistles going for it. This, of course, is the very well-known shoulder ornament, the Cartier pendant brooch. It's also, for those of you who know Cartier well, and I suspect that's almost everyone here, unless it's my brother who's listening in. This was also on the cover of Cartier in America, a great book, a great exhibition that had been at the de Young and the Legion of Honor. Anyway, look at this beautiful, beautiful piece. It's extraordinary. And then here she is wearing it in this painting of 1929, a year after she gets the brooch. And it has 7 carved emeralds, Mughal style carved emerald and diamond brooch. It's fabulous. And you also see it has in all 13 tear-shaped emerald drops. It's amazing, the former one you saw. Now we are moving along. Well, the blue heart, it just doesn't get any better than this. The blue heart is one of the stars of the Smithsonian. It was given, it has a great history, which I've written down for you, but its history really begins in 1908. It was, the rough was, I can't see all my notes, it was about 100 carats. And by the time it was cut, it was a slender 30.62 carats. That was the beginning. It gets owned by various great houses, has great owners. Sometimes it gets sold because marriages change or they get dissolved. But at a certain point, around 1959, it lands with Harry Winston. And he takes upon him to redesign it. And he puts this beautiful tracing of these 25 brilliant cut diamonds around it. Mrs. Post purchased it in 1964, which is the same year she gives it to the Smithsonian. See, that time it didn't work. Sometimes this moves and sometimes it doesn't. Well, this is amazing. So while the Mrs. Post and her husband, Joseph Davies, were in Moscow, he was the ambassador to Moscow. She decides while she's there that she's going to have Cartier take a couple bracelets of hers and refashion them as a necklace. And on top of which, she decides that she's going to give them this beautiful, beautiful cushion cut sapphire to put in the middle. And so she does. And it's this Burmese, it's a 40 carat cushion shaped Burma sapphire. You see it in this photograph. You see her wearing it in this painting. It suits her well. She actually, in fact, as you're starting to notice, was always painted wearing some of her best jewelry. This is one of them. We will go to the next one, the Marie Louise diadem. This is a great story, another great story. So this begins life when Napoleon gives this to his second wife. It's this transformation to the Empress Marie Louise. Along the way, Van Cleef and Arpels acquires it in 1953. And what do? Well, people have different views about this, but they basically popped the emeralds and they sold the emeralds, and they would put ads in the New York Times like, you can buy this emerald and own a piece of history. Some people were scathed by that, but others snapped up the emeralds, and I don't think anyone was really terribly unhappy at that time. But at a certain point, they then replace all those emeralds with turquoises, and they replace them with these beautiful Persian turquoise. And at a certain point, Mrs. Post is getting ready to go to the Red Cross Ball of 1967, and she asked Van Cleef and Arpels, could she borrow it because it goes with her necklace, it goes with her turquoise and diamond bracelet, et cetera, and so forth. And as you can see, she looks quite swell. This is down in Palm Beach. She liked it so much that she bought it, but as true to form and to her natural generous nature, she also gives it that same year to the Smithsonian. Let's talk about one of the most famous historic pieces in the Smithsonian, also courtesy of Mrs. Post, is the Napoleon diamond necklace of 1811. This was given to the Smithsonian in 1962, the same year that Mrs. Post purchased it from Harry Winston. So what you have here is this constant legacy of giving by Mrs. Post, and I can't stress enough what she's done. I think of the Smithsonian as one of our most landmark American museums, in part because it's in Washington. And she has done so much to help that collection. As an aside, however, since I like to connect dots, Jackie Kennedy was at one point when she was in the White House and she had to do the gifts of state, she was so taken by the gem collection at the Smithsonian that she on the spot decided that all the gifts of state that she and her husband would give would be comprised of gemstones mined in America. She sends out a brief to see what jeweler might get the assignment, and my pal David Webb, whom I've written about, gets the assignment at the age of 37 to create the gifts of state. But it all connects, all these women doing these things, these very American acts of generosity and patriotism. Patriotism had no finer friend also than Bunny Melon, who her name is so well known to so many of you for so much. Here she is with her husband and the Pays, I.M. Pei, at the opening event at the East Building, the National Gallery in 1978. What the Melons have done for art in America really is the subject of hours and hours of discussion, but I simply want to say it's extraordinary. At auction, speaking of jewelry, look at this Cartier diamond Riviere, 79 old European cut diamonds, and look at the yellow diamond clasp. It's kind of amazing. That Riviere, when it went up for auction in 2014, sold for $2,797,000. I really don't know what they paid for when she bought it, but I will tell you again, connecting the dots, we just talked about Marjorie Merriweather Post and Jackie Kennedy. Well, Bunny Melon helped Jackie Kennedy, who was one of her best friends, redo the Rose Garden at the White House. So all these things sort of connect. And As the second wife of the financier, Paul Melon, she helped him amass this amazing art collection, works from Cezanne to Rothko, and that she either donated to the National Gallery of Art or which hung in their home, which is kind of extraordinary. Look at this. This is this extraordinary, called a rare fancy vivid blue diamond. This sold for more than $32.5 million. The photograph starts to do justice to it, but it's a hall of mirrors. It's amazing. However, let's not forget that at heart, Bunny Melon was a gardener, and she famously she was very close friends with Jean Schlumberger. And if you look carefully at this photograph, she's wearing a blue smock, and that's one that Schlumberger gave him. He always wore this blue Frenchman smock, which was indelible to a lot of the working class. The workers in Paris often wore these blue smocks. If any of you knew about Bill Cunningham, the great fashion photographer, Bill also wore the smock. But here's Mrs. Melon wearing the smock, looking out over her little topiary. Verdure makes her this beautiful apple blossom brooch, but really amazing is the flower pot, which, let's just unpack this a little tiny bit. The flower pot itself came from Mrs. Melon's potting shed. It was used for growing seedlings. So she gives it to Schlumberger. He puts it in this gold case. He adds these beautiful little batons of emerald. And what does he do to the flower? He plunks originally an enormous blue sapphire in the middle, which could be removed and worn as a brooch. And then in time, it has this amethyst hunk in the middle. And today, both these pieces are in the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. But I just love this story. She had so much Schlumberger. She had so much Schlumberger. She had so much Verdure. She had so much of really everything. But she was a loyal patron. And that's the other thing. Loyalty and patronage is a big part of these women and something I esteem in them. Jane Weitzman, who I say forever in good taste. She was quiet like Bunny Melon. She was tiny. She was a small thing, but she was powerful. What I love, the reason I showed you this picture of Mrs. Weitzman in her home is how much it looks like the cover of the Weitzman galleries in the publication that they did. They donated these amazing galleries to the Met Museum. I just love these French vases. I hope you notice the elephant faces in the vases, but you're probably drawn to something I'm looking at, which is the Cartier ruby. And it was made in 1935, thereabouts. It's old mine round and single cut diamonds with this emerald pendant, which was a later addition. By the way, when this sold, this went for $674,500. Well, this is one of my favorite things. I adore pearls, and I think corsage ornaments are just the coolest things on the planet. And just look at this thing. Again, another piece of jewelry you could unpack. I won't do it right now, but I'm just going to give you some other numbers. When it went up for auction, the estimate on it was $800,000 to $1,200,000, and it sold for double that. It sold for just over $2 million. It was the top selling lot in the Sotheby's auction of Mrs. Weitzman's jewelry. So you have these women, great jewelry, but doing great things for the country. We have another one of my friends, which is Brooke Astor. And I think, yes, she is what I call a study in graceful force. I love this. She's wearing this great Bulgari emerald and diamond necklace of 1959, and she's wearing it here with Lady Bird and LBJ. Lady Bird, it should be said, was also a great patriot with her bettering of America's highways, which God bless her, because it can be boring to drive on a highway. And but this necklace is beyond smashing. And I will tell you that when it was sold for $686,500. It has 14 marquee diamonds, amongst many other things. It's just extraordinary. And then those of us who live in New York in particular owe a lot to Mrs. Astor. Well, her husband, all the Astors, for the New York Public Library. Did you know she wrote some memoirs, which I think is adorable? She was also a dog nut, which I am. So I relate to that. And if you've ever seen images of the interior of her home, if you go up the staircase, lucky her, she had at least a duplex, probably a triplex. I have a very small, what the British call a bedsit. But if you're in Mrs. Astor's home, the walls are just lined with portraits of dog paintings. So she says, if you love to read, if you love nature, and if you have a dog, you've got it made. So she's holding one of her many dogs, the dachshund with "Don't you love the gold ruff?" But look at her ear clips. They're the same ones that you see here. She was just, she was a lady. And she was just a wonderful, wonderful patron. She is the reason the New York Public Library is, frankly, one of the greatest libraries in the country, next to maybe the Beinecke and a few others. Power is mothers and daughters. I'm a big believer in that. Those of you who are mothers, those of you who are daughters, you know what it's like to receive wisdom or to generate wisdom to your daughters. And I don't think we can overlook that. Just as I said to you about Gertrude, Vanderbilt, Whitney, 4 generations of Whitney women have been involved with the Whitney Museum. Of course, there's our favorite. We now think of her as the Queen Mother, but the Queen with Princess Elizabeth on Coronation Day. She's so adorable, the Queen Mother, then Queen. And there aren't a lot of pictures of Marjorie Merriweather Post with her daughter, actress Dina Merrill, but here's one of them at Mar-a-Lago when it was still a Merriweather Post home and not the home that it is today. What I also want to make a point about mothers and daughters is that it isn't just jewelry that you give down, although I'm happy to say I'm wearing my grandmother's pearls that were my mother's. But what you also give is a regard for what I consider civic duty, democratic values. So even though Mrs. Kennedy, there was the auction of her jewelry upon her death, here are a couple pieces that went directly to Caroline. Those Waterfall earrings that we looked at and that Victorian sunburst, starburst pin. I love that Caroline Kennedy Schlossberg has got it now as a sash, sort of a belted sash. She's been remarkable for this country as an ambassador to Tokyo, for carrying on, staying involved with the Kennedy Library. Frankly, in my book, she just gets a lot of kudos for withstanding so much personal family loss. But I do think that that's why people have children, because you pay it forward, and you don't just send the jewelry, you send the values. I want to talk about another kind of power and values, and this is the power of the screen, but it really is Elizabeth Taylor. Now, some of you know that I have written on Elizabeth Taylor and spoken about her before, but I'm besotted with her. She did change history. As a young girl, she becomes an actress, Lassie, where she says, "Oh, Lassie, come home, Lassie." And, everyone in America on TV just wilts. And at one point, Louis B. Mayer yelled at one of the producers on the set saying, "Wipe that mascara off that kid." And the producer said, I can't, it's her natural eyelashes. She was a great beauty. But because she was a young beauty, she really developed a sense of agency. So by the time that she's signing a contract for Cleopatra, which would have been around 1960, 61, she says, "Hold everything. I'm not doing it on the cheap. I want $1 million. You're going to pay a Charlton Heston or whomever, a John Wayne, a lot of money. You're going to pay it for me." So when I saw this photograph, which we put in the book, Diamonds Across Time, in my essay, I thought she really does look like the Cheshire Cat. And by the way, well, she should. She then goes on to, I think we missed one. Yes, Cleopatra. I do love this line. This is actually a line she says in the film: "I will not be told where I can go and where I cannot go," which I must tell you is when art imitates life, because Elizabeth, the person, was very self-directed, and she knew who she was. Look at this cape. This is 24 karat gold leather strips. Isn't that remarkable? And it's meant to mimic the wings of a phoenix, which sit atop this big thing, this big headpiece that she's wearing. And what I love is that it symbols rebirth and ambition, which I think is one of the many descriptions for Elizabeth. She is the one book that she really allowed to be written about her life that she participated in was My Love Affair with Jewelry, because it was a lifelong love affair. And so much of the jewelry she got came by way of the men that she was in love with. And this Bulgari sautoir, which led off the top of my talk, is fantastic. And Elizabeth wore it a lot. She's wearing it top left on her 40th birthday. She's wearing it bottom right when Burton turns 50 and they're in London. At this point, she's 43. I mean, she wears it extremely well. It's now owned by Bulgari, and how great that they just love it, and they love everything that Elizabeth did. I think she really, Bulgari was a great house well before Elizabeth Taylor, but it became a better known house because of Elizabeth, because as everyone knows, she and Burton got their emerald and diamonds from Johnny Bulgari when they were in Rome creating a scandal while shooting Cleopatra. Okay, diamonds galore. There's the Elizabeth Taylor ring, diamond ring, 33.25 carats. And then there's the Taylor Burton diamonds, 69.42 carats. I think you can tell which is which. I mean, I love this picture of her wearing the first stole, because you get a sense. By the way, my hand was the same size as Elizabeth Taylor's, which is about the only thing we had in common. So I have a sense that that thing was a knuckle buster. It would come up to here. The Peregrina, the Mike Todd, the Cartier that he gave her, the Cartier Burmese ruby and diamond suite, which re-lands Cartier on the map. Look at the Bulgari emerald and diamond earrings. Look at the Peregrina. She goes to Cartier. She works with them, and it gets remade into this amazing necklace. So she works with the pearl from the historical past, and she updates it for who she is. By the way, everybody, she wears her jewelry in all her films. I don't think there's any jewelry she wore, unless it was paste, that wasn't hers. So you can go through all her movies, and you can even find, oh my gosh, a Chapulo Hamsa. You can find a VCA wood pendant. You can find everything. You can, oh, the Peregrina even makes a showing in a film. She does a walk-on in The Taming of the Shrew, which was really not, she was not supposed to be there, but she was looking after her husband. She was afraid he was going to have an affair with his co-star, Genevieve Bujold. Anyway, the stories go on and on. What I loved is the day I was introduced to this ring, Elizabeth turns to her then assistant, Tim Mendelsohn, who's now a trustee, and she said, "Tim, show Ruth my baby." I thought, what in the hell is she bringing out? Well, here it is. It was some baby. It was staggering, this Asher cut. And most of you know all about it, but it's just fun to see it again. The real story of Elizabeth is her compassion and her loyalty. She was friends and stayed friends from the get-go with Mickey Rooney, with Roddy McDowell, with Rock Hudson, with Jimmy Dean, with Monty Clift. Goes on. And so it winds up that eventually, once Rock Hudson gets sick, she's like, that's it. I have to do something about it. I have enough power. I have enough sway that I can do something. Don't you love this picture with Monty Clift, though? I think it's great. So what does she do? She testifies. Here she is with Nancy Pelosi. Here she is testifying before Congress. Here she is receiving the presidential medal from President Clinton for all her work. Here she is in a still from an upcoming film being done by the Trust on Elizabeth and AIDS. She walked the talk. And that's what I love about her. I am always amazed that for a woman who had so much, that she gave even more. As she used to say, I'm just the custodian of my jewelry. And she used so much of that jewelry to help others. It's one of the greatest stories of philanthropy, one of the best collections of private collections of jewelry in the world. And she uses it to help, well, frankly, worldwide. AIDS is worldwide. It's not local, it's everywhere. Well, I'm going to dash through the Duchess of Windsor. I'm not a big fan, but I will say she did a hell of a lot for the Panther. And it's amazing that she actually owned the first and second of the Cartier brooches. She says mine is a simple story of an ordinary life that became extraordinary, which is rather true. I think they paid a price, she and Edward, but this is what they decided. And, it was important. The Prince of Wales brooch, I put it in here because what's interesting is that when the Duchess passes away, the brooch is put up at auction with the proceeds to go to charity, the Louis Pasteur Institute. Elizabeth buys it. It's the first piece of major jewelry she ever bought for herself, which is amazing considering that she had all that, she had loads and loads and loads of jewelry before then. And here she is wearing it at a party, I think a birthday party for Malcolm Forbes, and she's wearing it in a very striking way. She has a bodice on which to pin it. Let's just put it at that. So it's great. There's Daisy Fellows, again, quickly, but you gotta love her. This is a case of using society to get a step up. She had fabulous jewelry. She's wearing the VCA diamond and emerald mancat cuffs here. It's hard to see them because she's got this bird thing going on her shoulders, but she was fabulous. We think of her, again, speaking of birds, there's the Boivin pigeon feather clips of 1936, extraordinary, pinned on this, rather bird-like gown that she's wearing. And then, of course, why do we talk about Daisy Fellows? Because the Tutti Frutti, what was called in a more appropriate way, the Hindu necklace, sometimes spelled Hindou, but more significantly, we think of it as the Tutti Frutti. And it gets changed by her daughter in '63, modestly, but it gets changed. But it has spawned, there are many Tutti Fruttis in the world. And I think it's a phrase that is probably one of the best known expressions in the world of jewelry. Then there is the power of the throne. I must tell you, I don't know as much as many people who are besotted with the throne know, but I am rather taken with the throne in many ways. And one of my favorites is Queen Mary. I'm just crazy about her. There's Queen Victoria, who's wearing the coronation necklace with the Lahore diamond. It was actually made for her coronation. And then you see Queen Elizabeth wearing it bottom right. There's my fave, Mary, in the middle. There's another one of my favorites, Queen Alexandra, who was Mary's mother-in-law. And why does this matter? Well, the first book I ever edited was called The Queen's Jewels. And I remember thinking, what the hell do I know about jewelry? I was so young, I was 28 or so. And I thought, well, my grandmother has jewelry, so I want to make the book something that my grandmother will like and understand. And I had fun. Our author was very involved with, she said, the palace, that she had the personal permission of the prince, meaning Prince Philip, Leslie Field, who was from Park Avenue, but was in all other regards sounded very British and looked very British. And she wrote a humdinger of a book. It's a fabulous, fabulous reference book. So it's quite old, but it's very, very helpful. My point is that we see pieces that come through the years. We see things that show patrimony. The dress that Queen Mary's wearing on your right, all the embroidery is symbolic of features in the United Kingdom. Look at the great stomacher that Mary's wearing in the next picture. The Delhi necklace, which, by the way, if I can show you, was on the cover of my book. And here it is again. And this is really what I think of as succession. I mean, don't you love that? That's 4 generations. And Victoria is holding a little baby by the name of Edward VIII. So things move along. Here are my girls again. I just can't help myself. The Grand Duchess Vladimir of Russia tiara is perhaps one of my most favorite tiaras. And here it is worn by Queen Elizabeth. On the right, she's wearing the Kakashnik. Not so bad, all those diamonds. And then lastly, the very last slide, everyone knows what artist made this. It's a Warhol. And I just want to say thank you. There's so much more here, but I've really, I haven't run out of gas, but you all have run out of time. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Wonderful. Thank you, Ruth. This was an intriguing and fascinating presentation. Yeah, we have some questions. In continuation of some of the stories you told and of personal meetings that you had, A. Arrington asks, did you ever meet any of these women in your research? And you did, as you mentioned, Elizabeth Taylor, but what were some of the most memorable moments that you can remember of personal meetings with women's jewelry that you have researched?
I think the Queen's jewels was important because I adored my grandmother, and that's how I fell in love with jewelry, was looking at her jewelry. So when I was this young girl asked to edit the book, I felt it was a way of giving back to my grandmother and to thank her for getting me so interested in jewelry. And then 20 odd years later or so, I met Elizabeth Taylor and ended up doing the book with Elizabeth. So meeting her was pretty much of a high. It was extraordinary. I actually will tell you all, I'm not too embarrassed to say this, but I curtsied when I met her because I didn't know what to do. She held out her arm, so I didn't know if I was supposed to kiss it or what, and that's what I did.
Yeah, well, that's great. A lot of the jewelry that we saw in your presentation goes back to the 20s and the 30s, and you see, and you know it, and many of our participants know it, the influence that the Cartiers and the Bulgaris and those great Place Vendôme jewelers, how they were influenced by the jewelry of the Maharajas. And
without question, they were traveling there and buying stones.
Yeah,
trading stones.
And if you, I read the book by the granddaughter of
Francesca.
Of Francesca, yeah. And those stories are riveting about how strong that influence was. Were the owners of the jewelry aware of those legacies?
They were. They knew that the Arpels, the Cartiers were going abroad and bringing them back. They were selling, I mean, frankly, they were selling on both sides of out of both pockets. They were selling to the Indians, they were buying from the Indians. And it was the same thing here. So everybody made out quite well. It's extraordinary. I mean, so much so that right now, I'm not sure if it's still on in Paris, but there was the great Cartier and Islam show that shows a lot of the goods that the Cartier brothers brought back and how they would look at these Indian jewels or these Islamic pieces and create jewelry for, let's say, the American market. Because at that time, women of means, they had money, but they didn't have titles. With the jewelry, royal jewelry, imperial stones from Indians and elsewhere, they suddenly had titles. So it made them important.
No. Again, looking at that historical review almost that you gave about patronage and about an enormous amount of awareness that their jewelry needs to be preserved for posterity. How is it today? Are we now in the 21st century, into the second decade? Does it still exist, or are we seeing actually that any collection that is somebody dies, somebody well known, and that goes into the category of the women that you described, it goes to auction at Sotheby's and Christie's, and it is sold. Are those museums still getting important gifts?
Well, they're not getting enough of them, frankly. Museums need patrons across, that's full stop. And David Webb wrote an article in 1963 called "Why Not Hang Gems?" And he basically made a plea saying, we hang paintings, we put sculpture in museums, let's put jewelry in museums. And women tend to either their estate sell their jewelry or they give them to their children and or their in-law children, and we don't have enough people giving jewelry to museums. It's very tough.
Yeah.
If anyone out there has jewelry, consider giving to one of the great museums in America. I really believe in that. I mean, the MFA Boston, fabulous jewelry collection. We can point to museums that have great collections, but we need more, and they need more.
Great. Another question that we have here, as we saw from Cleef & Arpels, Cartier, Bulgari, Chaumae, a question by Tula Balas. Who are some of the new jewelry designers that high society is connecting itself to, or that we are seeing in American designers, as you are?
Well, Tula Balas asks a smart question. She's a smart girl. We used to work together at Abrams. I'm so glad I can answer that, Tula. I think there's three top jewelers today, in no order. I'm just throw out their names. There's Joel Rosenthal, there's James de Givenchy, and there's Hemmerle. Each look very different from one another, which we would expect. Each are geniuses. It's hard for me to overstate how much I love the jewelry made by James. I feel the same way about Joel. And I think Hemmerle stay in their lane. They know who they are. Every time you see a piece of Hemmerle jewelry. To me, these are the gods of jewelry today, the greatest jewelers. There are other jewelers who are very, very good. But if I were a girl with money, that's who I'd be buying.
All right, great. Somebody mentioned, it was actually A. Errington who mentioned that he had heard you at Jewelry Camp, and speaking about one of the topics that you touched upon here. I have to go back to see the question, the exact topic. But what is apart from addressing us right now, what are you working on, and where are you appearing, and what is your work right now?
What am I working on? I am finishing a book for Thames and Hudson called Modern Jewels, The Power of Design, 1960 to 1979. And I think it's a first ever survey of about 140 jewelers during the period. And so that's been serious fun and hard and long. And I've exasperated my publisher and I've exasperated myself, but it's really fun to do. And I'm writing a new book for David Webb, which is The Art of David Webb, speaking about art. And I've got a few other things that I can't talk about, but I think about jewelry as design, Yakov, and I think as an old art book editor, I just see it as part of fashion and film and architecture. And as soon as you look at it that way, every time you look at a piece of jewelry, you can talk about design and what was happening. This is brushed gold. This makes sense. It came out of Italy in the 60s. It was my mother's. But you can tell time by a piece of jewelry. And I love that in the same way that we look at periods in art. We look at the Ashcan School, we look at the Impressionists, we look at the Abex artists, we look at the pop art artists. We know what was going on and we understand why these things were happening. So I'm sort of, as I say, I'm Sherlock Holmes, Sherlock with an E. I try and figure it out.
Great. And the last question, which, hold on, there is another question that came up. well, we're not going to answer that one because this is not really relevant to your
Oh,
topic.
good.
And so the last question is, as we agreed, is what I call the Hotel California question.
Yeah.
What we all share in this industry is that we are all here. Many of us have tried to check out, but you find out that you can never leave. How did you get into our industry and into the niche that you occupy today? And were there, everybody has had mentors, was there somebody who threw that switch for you and you say, this is what you're going to do? How did it happen?
I really thought I was going to be a fiction editor. I thought I was going to be a professor. Then I thought I was going to be a fiction editor. And then at one point I worked for Judith Jones, who was Julia Child's editor. And I thought I'd be a cookbook editor. And then I just fell in love with jewelry. And it just interests me every single minute of the day. And I would be fat. I mean, I like to eat too, so I like food too. I like it all. Thank you so much for hosting me, and whoever is still listening,
wonderful.
Thank you for your patience.
We had a very nice and knowledgeable audience. Alex is with us again. On the screen, ladies and gentlemen, you see the 3 publications that have come out under the patronage of the World Diamond Museum, Facets of Mankind. Our last publication, Munu, about the Gem Palace in Jaipur, came out just weeks ago. It is in the process of being distributed, and go to our website, facetsofmankind.org, if you want the book. Alex, is it on Amazon as well?
Yes, it is, and it's available to everyone. And I was always there. I just didn't want to show my face to attract attention from wonderful and powerful women. And I'm back because I was extraordinarily fascinated with this, Ruth, your presentation and your enthusiasm and your love for the for jewelry. I share it so much, even though I'm not a powerful woman, but I do like it and I share it with you. And thank you for
you can be an honorary member of the tribe, Alex.
Thank you very much. I feel very well in the good company of very powerful and very interesting women. So thanks for that. And thank you again, and looking forward to see you very soon, Ruth. Thanks.
Very good. Wonderful. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Ruth, once again for a very, very fluid and very interesting presentation. It was fascinating. It ran like clockwork. It was wonderful. And
well, I'm afraid it ran over the clockwork. But,
no, that's fine. I told you, we have no problem running over time when things are going well, and it remains interesting. So thank you again. As I said earlier, we're going to come back in about a month and a half. We will start announcing it in a few weeks where we go further. On the screen are the 3 books, as you see. Ruth, thank you very much. This was fascinating. Happy holidays for those who are going into the holiday. And we hope to see you all soon again. And
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.